see it, say it, deal with it. When you connect things, be aware. And when you go and buy a car, ask the dealer to tell you what is being collected.
I bet you anyone listening to this, if you've ever hired a rental car, you can see the last 3 or 4 people that have connected to it.
Out of those 30, 27 still had personal data in it. There was 121 phones connected to them.
It feels like this needs to be sort of widely understood.
And some of the fines that have been thrown at organisations like Meta are colossal. We're not talking hundreds of thousands, we're talking billions.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Drivetime Podcast. I'm joined this week by Martin Wilson of Privacy for Cars. If you don't know and you've ever connected your phone to your vehicle, that vehicle now holds all of your personal data. So you're going to learn all about what data is being collected, how you can keep yourself safer and how you can delete that data when you hand your car on to somebody else. But it's a really interesting episode. Stay tuned. Welcome, Martin Wilson, VP of Partnerships for UK and Europe for Privacy for Cars. Good to have you in the studio.
Thanks, Jacqui. Thanks for the invite.
So I randomly stalk people at events, which is how I met you. Don't randomly stalk people. We were speaking at the same event at the VRA a couple of weeks ago. And the stuff that you talked about was something I hadn't considered. And it was one of the reasons I was quite keen to follow up and invite you on the podcast, because we try and cover technology. We're a global auto tech podcast, and we try to cover all technology around everything automotive. So what would be really helpful is just to give a bit of background about what you were speaking at the VRA recently, which is the Vehicle Remarketing Association event and their annual conference in Warwick.
Well, the presentation, what I was invited to go along to talk about was privacy, and in particular in-car data. Yeah. People are just, like you've explained, people are so unaware of what a car's actually capture today in terms of personal information. Yeah. If you think about a typical vehicle, the bits that they're unaware of, but you suddenly a light bulb will come up, is anywhere it drives, navigation, any addresses, anything that's stored in there, literally where that car has gone, is all within the dashboard of that vehicle. That gives life patterns. If you start to access that, you can see where that vehicle goes. Typically, people put home addresses in there, work addresses, holiday addresses, whatever. That's all stored in there. The second area of data that's stored in there, which is incredibly personal, is anything that's from a connected device, i.e. a mobile phone. You connect your phone to it, inbound calls, outbound calls, messages, biometric information, could be passwords. All of that is stored in that vehicle. If you connect any apps, that is typically now stored in that vehicle. I've seen, cars with Spotify accounts that are live from previous users in them. And, so all of that information sits within that vehicle. The thing that people don't understand, unlike a mobile phone, which the car is, it's unencrypted. Your mobile phone has a password on it, a car does not. Get the keys in there and I can see anything that's in that vehicle. We've all had experiences around hire cars. We get in them and we see 4 or 5 phones already connected. Well, we can get all the data out of that vehicle on those previous users and drivers of that vehicle from that data.
Before we kind of get into what do you do about it? How did you get into this space? What's your background, Martin?
My background is, it's originally marketing and strategy, but very much around technology. Yeah. I've been involved in innovation for many, many years. And I came across Privacy for Cars as a company probably about 2.5 years ago. It's an American-based company, very, very successful over in America. And I met Andrea, who is the chief exec and founder of the business. And I said to him, this is just a solution that needs to be in the UK and Europe. And the reason is, if you look at America doesn't have the data regulation that we have over here. We have GDPR and we have the Data Act 2018 over in the UK, and Europe has very, very stringent data regulations. And, the market is prime over here for a solution like this. And it's a huge problem. Because, say that very, very little is done about the personal data. And I've said, when we met, the event I was talking at, I think it's probably one of the largest GDPR breaches that exists today in Europe.
Yeah. We talk about, obviously, the work that we do when managing systems that hold customer data, and that customer data helps consumers buy vehicles, live with their vehicles, have them serviced, and then as they kind of exit their vehicle into the next one, is how that vehicle is then resold. So there's an awful lot of consumer data that we are very careful of. And also recently, Martin, obviously we've had risk around data breaches or cyber attacks or all these things, and we're very careful about how we give our data. But then we also readily have accounts in many different applications because we feel confident that that data is secure. So just thinking about then the privacy for cars element and how we can start to think about what steps should we take? We obviously know that it can access any data on your mobile phone, can then be hardwired into your vehicle. How is it stored in the vehicle, just incidentally? What happens to it when you plug your phone in? Is there a chip? What does it do? Does it sit on a hard drive? Explain that to me.
It's the data is typically stored within the hardware of the infotainment systems.
Yeah.
So you see that the thing that's sitting in the dashboard that gives you your maps and connects your phone to it, and it's most of that connectivity is either via USB or typically today Bluetooth. So as soon as you walk in the car, your phone's connected to it. Well, that's now pulling data out of your mobile phone.
Yeah.
You see it. You see your contacts in there. How do you know who's ringing you? The car knows. It sees it. It tells you who's ringing you on the dashboard. So you say suddenly that there is a replication of your mobile phone in there. So the challenge is, would you give me your phone unlocked and let me do anything with it? The answer is no. Other things that we say, which does shock me, is businesses today have very, very stringent policies over the device management of mobile phones, laptops.
Yeah.
But never do you see a car involved in that policy. But they let them go out. And when we met, the car that I demonstrated that we had the data out of, it's all the locations that vehicle had been driven. It was a military contractor, and most of those locations were classified MOD sites. The guy who we know his home address, we know his email address, we know his phone number, we know his information about his family. That was all in that, and that is incredibly sensitive information. You just think about the government cars. You think about a lot of these pharmaceutical cars, and then you consider the exec cars, and you just consider the data that's sitting in there and could be accessed by anybody.
Yeah. How is the data? Could I personally erase that data, or does it have to be done by a technician?
No, absolutely. You could do it. It will probably take you 10, 20 minutes to do it because you go through the manual, or you'll go and Google the video how to do it. And that's the problem is, a lot of organizations that say they're deleting the data, at a business level, they're doing it on guesswork. It's human judgment.
Turn it off, press it for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I hope it's gone.
But you have to follow quite specific processes to be able to factory reset that data. And so there's two levels. There's the bit that we've just said about the data that sits in the car. The other level of huge risk is you connect your phone to it. You know where it is. You can open the doors. You can start the car. You can drive it. Okay, so if you go sell it and we don't break that connection, you can track that car. You can go and take it out of the next owner's driveway. You can open the doors. You can do whatever. And so there's two elements. There's not only the data that resides in the vehicle, but it's then what we call the connected component to that vehicle. And that's another requirement that OEMs need to step up to the mark to ensure that that is being broken when that car changes hands. And so it's becoming more prevalent that vehicles are more and more data rich and they're more connected.
I bet you anyone listening to this, if you've ever hired a rental car and you get in it, you can see the last 3 or 4 people that have connected to it. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, we did a fun audit recently. We took 30
fun audit.
we took,
I know.
We took 30 lease cars in a compound and looked at them. Out of those 30, 27 still had personal data in it. There was 121 phones connected to them.
121 phones.
And they were lease cars.
Connected to 27 vehicles.
Yeah. And they're typically being used by families, whatever. So all these phones are being connected, and it could be, children's phones or whatever.
Yes.
You look at your family, I don't know how many.
Millions of them. So I've got 3 boys, my partner has 3 girls, but actually his youngest daughter always connects her phone to my car because she loves to listen to her music.
Yeah.
When I'm driving, she's like, she literally goes, can I get my phone in? Can I plug my phone in? And luckily my car has Android and Apple CarPlay, so whoever plugs it in can connect. But yeah, I have everyone's phones connected in my car because it's the one we use the most.
Well, you imagine that you just consider the personal information that from her phone that now may be in that car, and also where it's going to. Most of it's being uploaded over the air, and typically to OEMs.
Yeah.
They want the data because it's valuable. What we're seeing now is cars. I mean, the cars of today are astounding in what they capture. They open as you walk near them. They photograph you. You get in them. They weigh you. There's biometric sensors sitting all the way through. You're being filmed the whole time you're in the car. How do you think it knows if you're drowsy? Because it's following you.
You're tired.
Yeah.
You're driving like shit. Pull over.
But that's all being tracked. And that information is being shared with people like insurance companies, with finance companies. And most people just have no idea
I suppose it's good to know if you're aware, if you know, I mean, somebody said to me years ago, if you know there's a problem and you don't know anything about it, that's really bad on you. If you don't know there's a problem in the first place, that's bad. But if you know there's a problem and you don't do something about it, that's worse. So now we know there's a problem, or we know there's a challenge, and it's all around the data and connectivity of the way that our data is being passed up. The other thing as well, Martin, I got in my car, set it all up. I probably just said yes to all the terms because it's all connected. I'm going, yes. So I've probably given inadvertently permission for my car to weigh and fat shame me or do whatever, record me when I'm driving, check my behaviour. So I've just kind of gone, yeah, that'll do. But we very rarely read the small print to know what it is we're actually agreeing to as drivers. So maybe we should, as drivers, be more vigilant about what it is we're actually agreeing to be done with our data in the first place.
Yeah, we on Privacy for Cars, if you go to the website, we have a consumer area on there. And if you type the VIN number in of your vehicle, it will tell you what is being captured in terms of data. And it will also show you what you've consented to in terms of documents. And the typical consent off a tick box will probably take you about 2.5 hours to read. And it's thousands of words. And we also give it a grading of how highly educated you need to be to understand what's written.
You need to have a PhD to read this.
Yeah, some of it you'll be shocked. It's probably equivalent to, A levels or above, even degrees, to be able to understand the language that's written in those agreements.
It's written by lawyers, probably, to cover themselves about the permissions that you are granting this company in terms of the access to your... There was a Dilbert sketch once, wasn't there? Like, sign this, and then like Microsoft would turn up and literally lock you in your cubicle. Yeah, scary. There's probably an AI tool that will help you to dumb that down there, right? You can just say, tell me what I've consented to in bullet points and just allow it to, because I've never looked. First of all, I would never know to look for that. So if you're a consumer driving a car, VIN number into Privacy for Cars and you can look at what you've already consented to. I had no idea you could do that.
But there's at the top of the page, just on the, you don't even need AI. What we've got is a series of boxes at the top of the page, and it will tell you what data is being captured. And importantly, it'll also say what they're doing with it and who are they sharing it.
That's my weekend homework, though.
And go and have a look. I mean, it will openly tell you whether they're capturing phone data and transmit it over the air. I won't say manufacturers, but some of them do. They take copies of your mobile phone over the air and all your contacts. A lot of information is shared by third parties, typically insurance companies and finance companies. And that's what you're consenting to. And so your data and the way you're driving those vehicles is being passed around through third parties. That's what you've consented.
I feel violated.
Well, the thing is, it goes back to about 10 years ago or 10 plus years ago when people started, or the industry started to realize what Meta and Facebook were doing and how much money they were generating with data. Yeah. And they're thinking, well, we've got vehicles that drive around with people in. Let's turn them into data. And it's a gold mine for organizations now. And
are they monetizing it already, or are they monetizing that data already?
Absolutely.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. And it's incredibly valuable.
And how are they monetizing that data at the moment?
They're selling it to third parties.
To be like insurance companies to try and target you and do certain things.
Yeah. Some of it, I mean, there's valid uses for some data that a vehicle captures. And something that I've spoken about before is, I think there's a value for a vehicle to be tracked for a couple of instances. One, if it's involved in an accident.
Yes.
Or it's stolen. If it's involved in an accident, you want a response to you quickly. If it's stolen, you want to have it tracked down. But why should it be tracked at other times?
I know there's some really cool tech in my vehicle, which if there's an accident and I don't move and my door doesn't open, it will alert the emergency services. That stuff is brilliant. You go, yes, please. If I have an accident and I don't open my doors, there's a reason I can't get out of that vehicle. Please send help. So that's automatically built in and hardwired into my car, and probably into a lot of new cars, actually. But it's just, there's all of the other stuff that is maybe tracking that I'm not aware of. So it will automatically, I drive a Volvo, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but there was that great ad, wasn't there, where they kind of looked at all of the life that you might have not had if you had an accident and you were killed or the wife was killed, blah, blah, blah. So this car has probably saved my life a couple of times because it sees things before I can see them because the cameras are tracking. Yeah. If you're reversing out of something, it will automatically apply the brake if it thinks you're going to hit something, even if it might be the shrub of my neighbour's house that's blown in. But it makes decisions because it wants to keep me safe, and that's fine. So I'm okay with that. But it would be really interesting to know what else it's capturing about me and my driving habits, because, I'm human, and,
Well, yeah, just imagine that. So everything you've now just said,
yeah,
every time it's automatically braked. What happens if that's passed to an insurance company and that impacts your insurance policy next time round?
Yeah.
Because it knows who you are. It knows how you're driving. You think again, you're driving along the road. It tells you the speed of the road.
Yeah.
What happens if you're exceeding it? That could be quite useful information to...
I mean, I wouldn't normally speed willingly, but it's been not a school.
But that, again, it's information in the car. Is it accelerating hard? Is it braking hard?
Yeah.
And we're starting to hear, comments around things like electric vehicles. Well, we want to understand how they've been driven to see whether that will deteriorate, the battery life of it in time. And, what are the consequences of driving cars in certain ways? We're seeing it more in fleet as well. People want to know how those vehicles are being driven.
Yeah.
That information is being captured in those vehicles. Imagine now that you think the cars are stuffed with cameras. Why do you need a Google map system being created? Just ask the Chinese to give you visuals of all the roads as cars are driving around.
Yeah.
So so you'll be astounded with the information that's being captured. But I think I don't consider it an issue, and that's not with privacy of cars as well, is if it's generic. But as soon as it becomes personalized and it's linked to individuals, and it's got data that it can be identified against you as an individual, or your friends, family, or whatever, I think that's when it becomes problematic, and people are just so unaware of that.
The big takeaway from this episode, then, Martin, is all of that stuff that you protect in your phone is now willingly shared in your vehicle and not encrypted. So, privacy for cars, then, obviously, this was a business that was formed to make sure that issue was captured, solved, and dealt with. So talk about how you do that and the work that you're doing. Are you working with fleets, OEMs? Is it a campaign? What's the kind of work that you're doing?
The solution we offer is called Auto Cleared.
Right.
It's a mobile app. It can be offered as an SDK, a service development kit. And
thank you for telling what SDK means, because we live in the world of 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah, basically it's a very simple solution. You've got a tablet, you've got a mobile phone. Download the application, and you walk up to a car and you scan either the VIN plate off the window screen or, easier, the registration.
Right.
And what we will return is the details of the vehicle. What is it? And we will give you an image of what the navigation system or the telematics system in that vehicle is. As soon as you say yes, accept it, that's what you're looking at when you're sat in the vehicle, it will now give you step-by-step guides. Very, very simple. Press this, twist that, do this to delete the data.
For the vehicle, the vehicle,
yeah,
right?
To that individual vehicle based on a VIN. And I'll come back to why that's important. So you'll get step-by-step guide on how to delete all the personal data out of that vehicle. That typically takes less than 90 seconds using our instructions. The benefit that we do is we provide a coded process for that. So two individuals can get in the same vehicle and they'll follow exactly the same process.
Yeah.
If you don't use a coded process, there's a high risk that you won't clear the data.
Yeah.
We typically see, up to 70% of vehicles that are supposedly cleaned using human judgment of being unsuccessfully cleaned.
I thought I held it for 60 seconds. No, you let go of 55.
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we'll ensure all the navigation information is deleted. Anything that's been connected to it is also removed. And at the end of that process, once it's done, we typically will offer the ability to capture an image of that to demonstrate you've been in the vehicle. Yeah. And then at the end of the process, a time, date, stamped and location-based certificate is generated that can be shared with the customer or the user of it, or then put in your records as a business to say that vehicle has been cleaned at this point in time and who's done it.
So can you, because I'm thinking of the use cases for this, because obviously I work for a tech company as well, and we always think about what's the use case for this. So anyone that's got a leased vehicle will likely have it collected by a third party, not by the manufacturer, not by the leasing company, but by somebody appointed by that leasing company that then takes it into a remarketing process. So that could be Cox, BCA, another auction company, whatever remarketing company. Do they have a responsibility to clean the car for the consumer at the point of collection? Whose job is it?
So technically they don't have, or what we call the logistics company don't have the responsibility to delete the data. We're in conversations and contractual discussions with a number of the very big ones at the moment because they're the first person that touches the car.
Exactly.
And the customer experience is brilliant. If you take the car from the driveway and say, would you like me to delete your personal data out of it so it can't go anywhere? How happy would you be as a customer? I'd be delighted. And we send you the certificate.
I don't know that they've, and this is another sort of thing from a consumer protection point of view, the person turning up to collect your car, are they DVS checked? Have they been... I don't know. So that dude turns up, probably usually a dude, wearing the branded jacket for that remarketing company or that manufacturer. And they're appointed, probably a contractor who stands by the side of the road with the tax plates because they're a part of a logistics company. But you have to trust. You're only as secure as your weakest link, aren't you, really? So it would, for me as a consumer, I'd be really happy if they did that when they inspected my vehicle.
Absolutely, because first of all, you don't know what's in there. If they start to say, actually, do you want the data deleting? You're going to say yes.
Yes, please.
So it's done. You get a certificate instantly there, emailed to you to say, actually, and it's done at the point they've got to walk around the car and inspect it anyway and point out any scuffs and dents and whatever with you typically there. So that process, so that's the most logical. The next one in the chain, if they don't do it, is who then receives the vehicle. And it typically will go to an inspection company. It could go to a preparation company, a remarketing environment. And so they're getting the car and they're checking that everything's in. They've got to get in it. They've got to measure the mileage or check the mileage on it. They've got to open the glove box, check there's nothing left in the vehicle. So again, the inspection is going on. And there is a legal requirement then at that inspection point is to make sure that the data is not being passed on. And under GDPR, without going into the depths of it, is processing, the act of processing the data includes storing it. And so the user, you think that you and your vehicle, you have never consented for anybody to process your data in a way like that. So when that guy takes it to a dealer or wherever it's going to, have you theoretically consented to them doing anything with your data? The answer is no.
No.
So the only thing in law that you can do at that point is delete it. If you haven't got it, you can't have a breach of GDPR. So the thing is, the other thing is by asking, going back to the ways to do it and why privacy is so strong, privacy of cars is so strong, is we give you an auditable process of when it's done. If you ask your operative to do it, how do you know they've done it? How do you know what they've done? What processes have they followed? You've got no idea apart from a tick box on a sheet of paper and said, they told me they did it. It would not stack up legally. And it's, under Article 5 of GDPR Act, it's unlikely that a human process without automation will satisfy a GDPR compliance component. So the only way to do it is actually do it in an auditable way. And that's, as you go up the chain to the owners of these vehicles, a lot of them are owned by banks. You think that they're so anti-risk, but look at the risk they're exposing themselves to the ownership of those vehicles. And then you go down even into dealerships. They're selling a car on, they're letting you have a demonstrator car. They're giving you a loan car. All that data should be being removed out of it before it changes hands.
Okay, so that's super interesting. So anyone, whether you're a retailer and you're taking a trade-in, because that's the other thing as well, I traded my vehicle in. As you were talking about the vehicle, I could still see my old Volvo in my new Volvo app next to my other Volvo. I was like, I need to delete that off my app. So I just deleted it, but only about 2 weeks ago. And I've had my other car for a year.
Yeah.
So it's like, but why didn't it automatically remove it from my app? It should see from my account that I don't have that vehicle anymore. But I had to manually remove it from my own app. It was still showing.
It's a very, very good question. And then you turn around and say, whose responsibility is it? Well, again,
they could say it's my account, it's my responsibility.
No, it's not. It's you think about who's giving you that account, who's giving you the right to access it. It's the OEM.
Yeah.
So there is a responsibility of Volvo in your case to ensure that connection is broken from that car once it leaves your possession.
Yeah.
And that's a requirement. So, but you imagine that the fear of the owner of that vehicle, that you may not know who they are, if you suddenly start tracking them and actually could start the thing and open the doors on it. It might seem quite a lot of fun for you, to keep popping the doors and the boot on it. But
I'm not that weird. But if I was that weird, you're going to go, oh, I know, prank. Yeah, but I'm not that strange. But I think that, again, it's a knowledge that any retailer listening to this, because I had a really thorough handover of my new vehicle and I traded in my old vehicle, and at no point did the very capable salesperson say to me, oh, by the way, let's make sure your old car is no longer associated with this account, delete it, and then let's delete all your data. And that isn't their fault. I think that's just they didn't know, probably, as we don't know, what data is being held within that vehicle's infotainment system, because we don't know, because that isn't what we're there to do. So I think that's really interesting, Martin, that if you're a retailer and you have a lot of your salespeople or service people, teams handling a customer's vehicle that has data in it, it's about just being aware of the fact that your vehicle is holding unencrypted consumer data that you should remove, delete, do something with, uncouple it as the car is then handed on.
Yeah, again, it's, you look at it, technically you as an individual can do it.
Yeah.
It's complicated, and I'll come back to a couple of areas. If you've got a rental, have you got the time? You've barely got time to fill it with fuel when you take it back to the airport. Have you got time to work out how to get your phone off it? No chance.
I'm usually late for my flight. I'm going to just drop the keys and leave. I haven't scraped it, honestly.
And it is that. But then the other thing, when it comes into the dealer, I know a lot of dealers listen to this, is you think about the confidence, transparency to the next customer buying that car.
Yeah.
If you give them a certificate to say it's clean of data,
yeah,
how good is that going to feel? You've prepared it properly for sale. It's not complicated. It takes you 90 seconds to do. It's
like you can clear your Google history quicker than that. Like Michael McIntyre's as clean as your Google history. You're disgusting.
Yeah. But it's proper. And again, it goes back to customer experience. It's the simplest things that make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly intrusive when you start to see that. And it's not difficult to resolve. And that's why I said, when I spoke, I call this a ticking bomb, but it's so simple to diffuse it in a way that is meaningful and, quick and very, very, consumer or user focused in the business environment.
I think the example that you gave was a really, is one that I suppose, because if that person, that driver had been working for as a military contractor and they were going to sites that really were quite covert, you do need to be super careful of how you have that data. I'm sure people don't give a stuff about my daily commute to the station and back to drop my son or my Aldi shopping, but it's the fact that all of the other data that I have within my phone could be then in my vehicle, and that does worry me. And I don't think I have anything really exciting or worth stalking that's stalkable, but the fact that you have data and I don't know how much of my data is in that vehicle, or also what else is being tracked within that vehicle and shared with a third party. That's something that does kind of scare me. So I think for key actions from this episode, and we'll build them out at the end, I think it'd be really helpful to kind of capture, as a consumer, here are the things that you should be aware of, or you can check what data is being captured and shared by going onto the website and looking at what you've consented to be shared. And then also, how do you make sure that none of that data goes with the vehicle after you've handed it on? So, and if you're a fleet or you're loaning out vehicles to people regularly, how you have a frequency of every time that thing comes back is cleared, every single time. Yeah,
well, I would say my first thing is, it's actually not just military in terms of business. And I know what you're saying for what you do is slightly different. But if you think any business, that it could have customer information in it. So if I got hold of that car, I could see your customer base. If I'm a pharmaceutical company, I can see your patients. I can see where the doctors are. You've got all of that. And so you look at this information that's in there. It could be a business. You think about somebody that's delivering to homes. You suddenly know where all their customers are. And that's actually, could be electronics company. You know where computers are being delivered. You know where widescreen tellies are being delivered. You know who's got satellite telly installed. Just by getting access to those vehicles. But what I would say is, going back and to say, if you look at the responsibilities, is one is you as a customer that's driving that car, is be aware what's going into it. Yeah. When you connect things, be aware. And when you go and buy a car, ask the dealer to tell you what is being collected. Challenge is to stop it is very difficult, because you'll find a lot of the functions in the car won't work unless you consent to everything. So there's the first thing. But then the next thing is, if you're passing that vehicle back to somebody, you have a right to demand that they demonstrate a legal way that they have deleted your data.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're saying. It could be a rental company. You demand that rental company proves to you that they have deleted your data. A lease company, exactly the same. So you have a right to ensure that your data is being protected and not being passed on without your consent. And they can't refuse to do that.
No. So how how do you get this message out to consumers, Martin? Is there going to be some kind of campaign, or do you work with the press, or how do you, because obviously, we talk about, we went to the EV Summit recently, we're in an echo chamber here. We know what we're doing inside our industry. And the same with the VRA, that's a really important audience because that's the Remarketing Association. They're dealing with the majority of all used vehicles coming back into that used car channel. We obviously handle hundreds of thousands of used car vehicles through websites that we manage for retailers. And we see stock being defleeted through our different systems. So I suppose it's how do we then ensure that we capture that, yes, that car's been cleaned, or is there, that should be like, maybe we engineer that as part of every single vehicle, vehicle listing page has it's been cleaned. Or there's a way of publicizing it that consumers know to look for it. Don't know. I mean, obviously it feels like that's a bit of a big job, but we certainly should be working towards that. But I don't know, what's the kind of the next step in terms of consumer information? How do we educate the broader audience about it?
Well, consumers are more difficult. I mean, earlier this year, I was involved in a documentary with Channel 5, which talked about EVs, and there was a piece on there about not only the data but also the cybersecurity aspects of what's going on with electric vehicles. So there is a consumer angle, which I think is very important. But we're spending a lot of time at Privacy for Cars working with the associations, be it the VRAs. We work extensively with NAMA, which is the National Association of Motor Auctioneers. They've put a specification down of what is required to meet the test of GDPR compliance. Yeah. And our solution has been ratified by NAMA. And
you mentioned the BVRLA as well.
BVRA, yeah. And
really critical for all leasing.
Yeah, and then the FLA, which is the Finance and Leasing Association, I spoke at that the day after the VRA. So, we're engaged with these organisations. We're making sure that they're starting to write the right policy elements and advise their members about the requirement. We're spending a lot of time talking to financial institutes. They've got the title on the paper. We've already alluded to the challenge with those guys is they don't typically touch the cars. They have third parties working with those cars, and they're the ones that
they underwrite the residual value risk, so therefore they are the owner of the vehicle, and it's being leased to a consumer, but the ownership sits with that.
Yeah. And ultimately, the GDPR responsibility and the data protection responsibility resides with them.
Yeah.
So it's going through the line. So we're working across, and it's challenges because the market is incredibly fragmented of who actually has the vehicles. Even if we go into a dealer, most of those cars are financed by a finance organization. Technically, his name is on the piece of paper.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the dealer has responsibility because they're the current control of that vehicle when they sell it. So they should not be passing that data on because they've got no consent to pass that data on. Yeah. And therefore, technically, if they were abiding by the law, they would have to report themselves every time they sold a car to the ICO for breach of data.
I mean,
but again, it's not difficult. It sounds a big thing, but it's not difficult to cure the issue.
I suppose it's just being aware that your car is now a computer. Your car is like your laptop. Your car is your phone. It kind of has all of that data embedded in it, and that's the thing I think that was probably been missed in the technical evolution of the vehicle. That kind of happened so quickly. But as you mentioned earlier on, your vehicle isn't encrypted in the way that your phone is, but it could carry the same amount of information.
Yeah.
Personal information.
I mean, one of the things that we said that we're an American company, that one of the things that comes upon our solution is it connected to a garage door. Because in the UK, we have less relevance of that. But in America, you turn around and the car's still connected. You can open the garage door, walk in the house and go and take whatever you like on the house because that's the access in. All houses in America typically can get into via the garage. So if you have the access codes to the garage, think about the domestic risk. So it's quite frightening when you consider and the awareness at a consumer level of what data is in these vehicles and what is potentially being passed on and how easy it is to get access to it. You don't need a degree. You just need to get in it and you can see. You get in your Volvo and look. It will tell you everywhere it's been by looking at the navigation.
Yeah. Oh, no. Look at recent searches. I can tell you what I've looked at. But also it connects because it's connected to my phone. I can search on my phone in the house. I put it in my Google Maps. I get in the car and it will bring up my recent searches. It's connected to my Google account.
Yeah.
I know. It's connected, which is great. It's so convenient. I go, brilliant. I was searching for that 2 days ago, planning my life. There it is in my Google app. Oh, and there it is on my car without even connecting my car to my phone.
Well, one of the things that people, again, think this is brilliantly useful, but it will tell you how to get to where your next appointment is. Well, how does it know that?
It's connected to my diary.
Because it's connected to your diary. Exactly.
It does. We did that and everyone was like, oh, it knows I'm going there. That's handy.
And now that's in the car. So you imagine that information. So also, in the wrong hands, that's quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it knows you're not at home. It knows exactly where you are. And the more you write into it, actually, the more frightening it is. But again, it's not difficult to cure. Is limit or understand what it's being captured in the first place, but ensure it's not being passed on.
Yeah.
And the simple way to do that is delete it. If it's not in there, it's no harm to anybody.
Yeah, I suppose. And that's the thing, isn't it? So when you hand a vehicle back, make sure you delete the data out of it before you hand it back, or demand that there is a certificate that says it's been deleted. Even if it's not you and it's done by at the point of collection or the point of trade-in, it's figuring out how that can then be captured, deleted. Would the DVLA play a part in this? Is there a way of kind of which other organizations that are kind of consumer facing or insurance companies should be aware of this, or who else should be involved?
It's difficult. I mean, the DVLA have a very sort of varied and different role. It's something that, the ICO is the big one, the Information Commissioner's Office, because ultimately they're the guardians of what goes on with data.
Yeah.
In terms of who else could get involved, it's difficult outside of the industry to say, the industry needs to wake up to this and actually take responsibility for, what it's generating and how it's managing information and data. And say I just don't want it to be the next explosion that hits the industry.
Yeah.
And it is getting picked up. We've seen data regulation being tightened in the UK and Europe this year. And there's reasons for that. And some of the fines that have been thrown at organizations like Meta are colossal. We're not talking hundreds of thousands, we're talking billions. And the potential risk that organizations have today, if they were found of breach, the ICO guidelines for fines is 17.5 million or 4% of global turnover, whatever is the higher.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about chicken feed here. And we've seen cases in Europe, a slightly different industry, where claims of breach of data, of personal level, have been taken in court. And the typical remediation or fine is about 800 euros.
Yeah.
So if you imagine you go rent a car, just go and take them to court and get 800 euros back for every time you rent a car. So it's cost you 200 euros and you got 800 back in compensation.
Because they haven't deleted your data.
Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me if, we don't start to see potentially class actions going about this, because people are becoming more and more aware. Certainly at European level now, authority level, they're starting to become more aware. Several years ago, people just didn't know that cars captured this type of information. And no, if I said to you, you didn't know that it's like a mobile phone on wheels. Well, it is, and worse, because it's not encrypted.
It's weighing me as well. I mean, my God, it's doing other unspeakable things. So that's scary. So, one of the other questions that, as you were talking, I was thinking about the data that's being captured. We obviously heard recently in the budget about the EV pence per mile levy that's going to be kind of coming. How is that going to be administered? Is that going to be a responsibility of OEMs tracking mileage through infotainments and telematics? Or are they going to expect people to go, yeah, no, I only did 5 miles last year, so I didn't do it? Because, when set-aside happened in agriculture in the late 80s, the Italians put in the set-aside claim was bigger than the landmass of Italy. They just went, oh yeah, we've put this much into set-aside to get subsidies. So I wonder, how are they going to administer that? And it feels like that's going to be data from vehicles, particularly EVs, because they're all very connected.
It could well be. I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, we hear different opinions. I'm not going to comment on whether it's the right or wrong thing to do. But at the end of the day, there's a couple of things. Is the challenge with electric vehicles and applying that is typically, you see a new vehicle, it's not seen for 3 years at the first point of MOT. So, are you going to try and levy a charge after 3 years? Well, the same owner may not have the vehicle. So, it's difficult. And there's all sorts of things that have been thrown around that I've heard, anecdotal. You may find that it's almost like the peak travel on a railway. Off-peak times will be cheaper to use roads. There's all sorts of clever things that could be applied.
I don't want to drive to work at 3 a.m. Yeah, I don't start work until 9.
But that sounds perfectly logical, because you turn around and say, well, you can stagger, congestion. We all see congestion charging. So who knows what's going to go on in the future? But I just think that the way they've done it with a broad brush, I can understand why, because fuel duty obviously is going to be diminished with less petrol and diesel vehicles on the road, doing less mileage. So, they've got to, fill the coffers with something.
Yeah, fair enough. I get it. I think there's a way of obviously reducing, and so I completely get it. I think the timing of it, hasn't gone down well with the EV community because they're just trying to get to a net zero by 2035, and that's also challenging. But we've got luxury car tax. My car's expensive. My road fund license is expensive.
Yeah,
I could just have a cheaper car. I could.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that it makes you laugh that I won't say what car I've got, but it's a heavy car. It's not a modern car. And you're thinking now, well, these EVs are hugely heavy because of the batteries in them. You think about, are they bringing more wear and tear to the roads? The answer's got to be yes. Are they the holy grail going forward? I'm not sure they are. And it's something even I said yesterday when I was speaking at the BVLRA conference. I asked the question about the mix. The challenge with the used EV market in the UK is it's all been driven now by, in fact, corporate cars, fleet cars, which a lot of us want small cars. And I love things like the Renault 5, the new little Renault 5. It's a great looking car.
That was really well received at the EV Summit, actually. And even competitor brands are going, that car's great.
Yeah, but the thing is, the reason why, I heard that, I think it was Auto Trader was saying that one of the most popular cars selling in the UK is the Fiat 500.
Yeah.
You wonder why, because you can park the thing in towns, so they're great little cars to drive around. But we don't all want family cars to nip into town to go off and run our daily tasks, so some of these smaller cars. But the problem is in the used EV market, they just don't exist.
No.
Not at 3 years old. So we're starting to see more and more models coming in.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're still expensive. It's an interesting. I think the next few years of the automotive industry is going to be really, really interesting to watch, especially with the volume of new brands that are coming in, and they're very good cars. The technology.
They're very connected, and the tech. But to your point, Martin, all of that tech is tracking something.
Yeah, but also the build quality on them is very good.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to comment on some of the electric cars that have been around for a while, but you look at what's coming in now, and the quality of build of these vehicles and the price point is remarkable.
Yeah.
And the way they're being adopted into the UK is
it's
phenomenal.
A no-brainer for the price per month. For some of them, it is like that's a no-brainer. Yeah. Actually, it really is.
Yeah, but it is. It's the concerning is we already hear of talking to some of the fleet guys. There's some organisations say we won't touch you if you're bringing Chinese cars in. We don't want them in our business. We've already heard people like the MOD saying things like that. But there's ways to overcome that. Be aware of what data's in there, and then say that manage it. And ensure that it's not being passed on when they go on to new owners. And so, it's a complicated business, but it's all going to be data driven. That's
very, very much. So listen, so now you scared the pants off me from all these data. As we wrap up the main episode, Martin, I think what would be really, really good to kind of leave listeners with are data strategies they should be thinking about. If you own a vehicle, are remarketing a vehicle, are handling vehicles for other people, and just thinking about, or if you're a consumer, because I think actually it feels like this needs to be sort of widely understood for those people that are dealing directly with consumers, because obviously we have a lot of retailers listening to this. And also globally, this is a global issue. I know data, GDPR is different in different countries, but we're a global organization. We have people listening to this all over the world. So is there a uniform, regardless of your GDPR data compliance strategy that you should employ if you're handling somebody else's vehicle or a vehicle?
Yeah, setting aside GDPR, obviously that applies to Europe and the UK, but it's a global thing. We operate globally. We've got huge coverage of vehicles, and we can help process them. We've processed over 3 million vehicles to date, or supported the processing and the removal of data on them. So what I'd first of all say is, you turn around as an organization, it's a value-added service. Don't think of it as a burden to your business as an organization. Think of it as a value add, either to a customer that's bringing a car to you, offer to delete their data for them, do something for them that they weren't expecting. It's not expensive. It's not a time-consuming process, or then selling it on or giving it to a new user. Ensure that it's clean when it leaves your possession.
Yeah. And
that's whether you're a logistics company, whether it's a refurbing company, whether it's an auction house, it's all the way through dealerships, OEMs. We see so many OEM cars that are coming out of corporate ownership coming into the dealership's environment.
Yes,
supposedly with
approved used.
Yeah, approved used that have the requirement to delete data. But we've done mystery shopping in dealerships across the UK, and I think that showed about 70% of cars were for sale in forecourts, and these are premium brands. Some of them still had personal data in them. So again, it's businesses step up, realize that it isn't a thing. There is a responsibility. And what I heard somebody saying at one of the conferences recently, there's a great phrase, I think it's a train company say, is see it, say it, deal with it. That's the reality. It's not complicated.
See it, say it, delete it.
Absolutely. So just take it on yourself and support the organizations you're working with. If you're a lease company, just say this is what you're going to be. This is what's going on. Be transparent, and this is what you need to do. And give them the confidence that you're looking after their best interests. And that's at a business level, it's at a consumer level, and it's through the business. And so cars should not be going out through a value chain that have data in there. And that's acting responsible.
And that's really important. I think one of the things that I'll take away from this and actually take back to the product teams is how aware are we of it? How can we help consumers, and how can we help retailers that use our systems to make sure that this is part of their, because we obviously provide tech and systems, but also the bit that I think we are trying to encourage is like process. How do we kind of encourage process to be improved and more simplified and better quality? And we talk about experience first for customers. So actually, if we're thinking about our customers, it's really important that we are mindful of all of those different touch points that we get involved with and that we sort of see on that journey for a customer. So that's been really, I know obviously I saw you speak very briefly, but I was like, whoa, this is big stuff. It's a big thing. So what's next? Who else are you speaking to kind of next? What have you kind of got on your agenda for next year and as the campaign grows? Are you speaking in any other countries, or can we get you involved in any other countries that we operate in?
Across Europe is the main responsibility I have. There's UK and Europe. I mean, there's some of the stuff that we're doing, and now actually you talk about exposure to consumers. We're actively working with people like CAP HPI and MotorCheck. So we want the information being presented on vehicle history checks. But the events that I know that I'm talking at is in Europe. It's conferences that are being asked to come and share insight, and that's what we do a lot of time at Privacy of Cars. It's sharing the insight to the industry and say, okay, we might have the solution, but how do you deal with it? How do you bring it into your business in a way that doesn't have implications to you, doesn't have huge resource or cost impacts? So typically the types of events that we're being asked is the remarketing. We're active members of people like CARA, which is the European Remarketing Association. We're speaking at the fleet summits. We actively attend them and speak at them. And then there's a number of conferences. And then we're going to be very busy with people like the VRA, BVLRA, FLA, and NAMA, in the UK, just to ensure that they're supporting their members to do the right thing. So, what
about things like the retail associations? Do you get involved with that, or is it more remarketing because that's where you see the cars being disposed before they come back into the used car channels?
It's a bit of both. I mean, next week I think it is. I'm at the National Association of franchise dealers.
Yes, NFDA.
So I'm at one of their events, and so we're actively going out there. So anybody that's handling vehicles, it's you think about it, it's a hugely fragmented and very complicated industry, but it's anybody that's handling the vehicles, and even talking to OEMs, to say that this is a thing, it's a concern, it's something that you need to make people aware of in your organisations. We talk about the franchise dealers. A lot of the OEMs have got dealer groups or franchise dealers across the UK. It's something that they should be putting in their approved processes and saying that we need a certificate to show that it's been done and it's been done properly.
And we work with dealer councils, so I think they're a really rich resource of kind of user groups for us as we're talking about technology. Martin, also, should consumers, I mean, obviously now I've had this conversation with you, I'm going to do some homework about, okay, how much data are you collecting about me? And I need to know, I'm going to want to know. But as a consumer, or are consumers, or could we be more informed? So actually, before I hand the keys back for my vehicle in future, I will say, I want you to clean this vehicle while I'm in it. Because I wouldn't hand you when I change my laptop, I sat next to our IT guy. I was like, let me just flatten everything. Let me sign out of all of my accounts. Let me wipe all of my history, because you can see my payment details. I use this laptop, even though it's my work laptop. I do use it as well for Googling things and online shopping and blah. There's my Amazon account is on my phone, but it's obviously got my personal data in it, and I flattened it before I handed it back. It's a company machine, and it will then be handed on to somebody else, but I don't want somebody else having access to my Google account or anything else, or Spotify, whatever. But so should we as consumers sit there and make sure that when the vehicle's handed over, it's then flattened or deleted, all that personal data is deleted?
Absolutely, yes. And this is why I think the logistics companies in the UK that are moving those vehicles and collecting them from people's homes and things, certainly for the lease environments, I think that's a very valid thing, that you turn around and say, well, whoever it is, go to the lease company and say, well, if they're getting it from me, I want them to support me deleting the data.
Yeah.
You as a data subject or as an individual consumer or driver of that vehicle, it's not your responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think you're perfectly entitled to say and demand that they demonstrate that they've met the legal requirement of supporting you by deleting that data.
So when you say it isn't your responsibility, I kind of think that it is, because it's your data. So I think if I wouldn't give my phone to someone, I wouldn't sell my phone to someone without completely deleting it, because it's my responsibility, it's my device. And the vehicle, while it may be leased, it's my vehicle, I've been using it. So I think as a consumer, we should take the responsibility, if we're aware of that, to kind of delete our own data.
I agree. And, this is conversations we have within rental. The classic will be if you go and rent a car and you don't put petrol in it, when it brings back, they charge you for it.
Oh, gotcha.
So if you go and rent it and I say, well, Jacqui, can you delete the data out of it before you bring it back? If you don't, I should be able to charge you
10 quid for someone who's going to have to sit there and delete your data. There's a charge for cleansing that vehicle of your data.
Yeah. The challenge comes is now, it's a very, very complicated industry, but you look at things like rideshare. They're not actually being handled by anybody, but it's perfectly feasible that we can actually give the individual that's taking that car the empowerment and the information to be able to delete their data, because we know the VIN of it. We could, the rideshare company could provide them the information when they log out of that vehicle to say, right, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And then it's recorded that it's been done at the end of that transaction. So again,
and it should serve in your app.
Yeah.
Like if you've had a rideshare, it goes data cleanse, whatever. Yeah. That's bosh, done.
Yeah.
Because Uber don't know where I live. The driver doesn't know where I live. I'm in the car and I'm out again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it's again, there's different applications, but I think just the industry needs to turn around and start to now think about taking this seriously, and how do we deal with it?
Yeah.
And there's different. Everybody will come up with an excuse.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the law is the law.
Yeah.
You can't bury your head in the sand and go, oh, I'm just going to ignore it because it's too hard a problem.
Can't I really?
Because the consequences we see. I get horrified when, what's next? We're seeing the financial scandal around financial agreements.
Yeah, yeah.
We've seen Dieselgate. The challenge with the industry, it's a big target.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'd want to do is start to see the regulators coming at it for breach of data, especially when it's sort of, the wild west of what's going on at the moment.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap the episode up and I'm going to say, don't be the ostrich. Don't put your head in the sand. Understand what's going on with data and your responsibility to kind of make sure that those cars are cleaned in between users, drivers, whatever. And also, hopefully, if people haven't seen you speaking at one of these events, hopefully they will see the demonstration, because it is quite a powerful thing to see how quickly it can be done and cleansed. And it was really impressive. So thank you, Martin, for joining me on the podcast. And I'm really glad we can kind of get this message out there and also just be more data aware. And I'm more aware, I think, of how our data is being used and stored in the vehicles that we use every day. So, Martin Wilson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacqui, for the opportunity to come and join you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for joining me in the studio this week. If you haven't already joined us or liked and subscribed and you're watching on YouTube, do give us a like, subscribe and follow. You'll never miss an episode of the Drivetime Podcast again.